All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Suns firing their head coach, Mike Budenholzer, after one season. I tried to pronounce it the right way, but yes, they have fired him after 1 year, and that's the second time in 2 years that the Suns have let go of a head coach after 1 year. And Frank Vogel was the previous head coach, and then, like I mentioned before, Monty Williams was the head coach before Frank Vogel, and he was let go. So, yeah, again, it just hasn't been a good few years for the Suns. And now they're actually paying, Budenholzer still. They're still paying Frank Vogel. I'll get you the specific numbers because obviously these two individuals have not, coached out their contracts. But yeah, so they still are paying Frank Vogel his $31 million contract, $50 million for Budenholzer. So yeah, that's $81 million owed for two coaches that are not going to be coaching their team. So that's not good. And, it's just a lot went into this, of course. I mean, the Suns, they were just a major disappointment this year. It didn't seem like the players connected with him. Stuff with the rotations and not using certain players enough. The team was not good defensively. He's known for being also a defensive-minded, head coach. And, the Suns didn't really play defense so well, right? They were towards the bottom in overall defense. So you had that. But, I think also he was kind of the fall guy as well because this is a team effort, right? The front office puts together this roster. And you got to coach what you're dealing with. So, and the Suns, they thought when they got Kevin Durant that they were really going for it, that, hey, we're going to be finals contenders. We're going to be a championship caliber team. We're going to get there. We're going to win one. That didn't happen. It wasn't the right mix of players. I really think, the Bradley Beal trade really set them back. And like I've been saying, I think their window was when they made it to the finals with Chris Paul. You had Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton. Monty Williams was the coach. When they played against the Bucks, that was it right there. And oddly enough, Budenholzer was the coach of that Bucks team that won the championship. So, yeah, that was their chance to win it. And, since then, they took, a step back. And now they really took a step back because now they just didn't even make the playoffs. Last year was a first-round exit. This year, you don't even make the playoffs. And, it's going to be interesting what they do this offseason. Kevin Durant is not going to be on the team next year. Bradley Beal, who knows if they're even going to be able to move him. If he wants to be moved. I've been saying I don't think they should, trade Devin Booker. I think that's still your franchise guy. You got to keep him around. You got to have pieces to build around, and he is a major piece. So, yeah, they got some decisions to make in the offseason. Now, I was looking up, who could potentially, take over. I know there was an article that had several different candidates. David Fizdale is on there. Steve Nash. Dan Hurley. We know he interviewed for the Lakers job last year, but is he going to want to leave UConn? I don't know. Maybe he's up for a new challenge. UConn, was not able to three-peat, which I think we all figured that wasn't going to happen because they weren't as loaded as they were the previous 2 years. But could he make that jump to the NBA? Could this be a spot that, he potentially take? I don't know. Some other names as well from what I was looking at, but yeah. Well, we'll see what they end up doing. But yeah, like I said, Budenholzer, he was a 2021 NBA champion with the Bucks. Like I said, 9 playoff appearances in 11 seasons. He had a 693 winning percentage with the Bucks. But yeah, it's just, couldn't get it done. They were hoping he was going to be the difference here, but it did not happen. And it's also just, for a lot of people's eyes, it's a bad reflection on Kevin Durant, because it's just, again, it's another destination where he goes to a team and it just doesn't work out. The Nets and the Suns, it just has not worked out. They were two major disappointments. We saw Kenny Atkinson. He was forced out. I mean, he's redeemed himself. I mean, look at what he's doing in Cleveland. Steve Nash, that didn't work. And then he goes to the Suns, and 3 head coaches later, Suns are without a coach, and he's going to end up getting traded. So, yeah, not good. And I really want to see where he ends up, next year. Where is he going to go? Because I think there's this narrative out there that he's a culture destroyer. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's that. I don't think it's that. I think it's, look, Kevin Durant, and he said this in Brooklyn. He just wants to go out there and hoop. And these organizations, they try to surround him with as much talent as possible, but it just has not panned out. I feel like it could have. See, the Suns, I feel like, is different, right? Because Bradley Beal hasn't been great. I think he's also been hurt. But I feel like in Brooklyn, it would have worked had the surrounding pieces, stayed healthy. Now, Harden kind of, he wanted out. The Nets wanted Kyrie out. Well, he wanted out, but I think the Nets they couldn't wait to get rid of him because of everything that was going on. But I think had, Durant and Kyrie and Harden, if they all stayed healthy, I think maybe they could have did something. But it's just that window closed in a hurry. And, of course, Durant, he ends up getting traded to Phoenix, and Harden goes to the Sixers, and now he's with the Clippers, and Kyrie is in Dallas. It's just, and the Nets were left with nothing. Now they're trying to rebuild and pick up the pieces. And, for the Suns, I think, are in a better spot because you still have Devin Booker. You still have, like I said, you still have that franchise player you could build around. But it's just very disappointing. And, with Durant, I shouldn't really say he's a culture destroyer. It's just he's really just a common denominator in these last 2 destinations. He goes to a team and everything just kind of falls apart. Whether it's directly his fault or not, that's just what it's been. But the Suns actually, I think with Durant, I wanted to say, because I was looking at the record with and without Durant this year, they, I think, were 33-29 with him, and then they were 3-17 without him. Like, they ended up losing every single game pretty much after he got hurt, and he missed the final, week or so. Because the Suns, they ended up finishing 36-46. And they did end up winning a game. They beat the Spurs 117-98. But yeah, they finished 1-9 in their final 10 games. So, we'll see if Budenholzer will get another job. I'm sure he will. These coaches, they seem to be going all over the place. Trading places. So, I think he could end up with another job somewhere. Michael Malone, of course, he's out of a job. So we'll see if the Pelicans job ends up opening up, because I know they've made some moves. Maybe one of them wants to go there and coach Zion. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the Suns letting go of Mike Budenholzer. Where do you think he could potentially end up if there's a job opening? Like I said, the Pelicans, could be an option. If they let go of their head coach. I don't think they've done that yet. The Nuggets, The Nuggets are going to need a head coach. The Grizzlies, there's opportunities out there. Um, so we'll see what happens. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day. So any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So, when we come back from our next break, we will talk a little bit about baseball. We'll talk Padres, Cubs when we come back. A little bit later in the show, we will talk about Aaron Judge being named team captain of the USA team for the World Baseball Classic. So that's exciting stuff right there. But yeah, no, baseball is in full swing right now. Cubs Padres did play last night. We'll talk about how that game went. And then a little bit later in the show, we'll get into football. We'll do the post free agency rankings for the AFC East. So yeah, moving right along here. Again, let me know what you guys think though about the playing games for tonight. Who you have winning those games. And yeah, so that is what we are going to do when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around. And we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.